You've just entered the No Delusion Zone. I'm David Debato. Today, my very special guest is someone who's been here before, and I'm very, very happy to get her back. Anna Danilchuk is the creator and the host of the very popular YouTube channel Anna from Ukraine. She hosts vlogs with real life human stories from Ukraine and videos about the Ukrainian culture and history. The hell with that. You're the best Ukrainian blogger out there, period. You've got the best podcast, and you give the true, honest, and passionate news from what's going on in Ukraine, the news on the ground. You don't give the politically correct speech. You don't talk about what Ukrainian or politicians say, or military or senior people. You say what the Ukrainian people think and feel during a brutal genocidal war that's been going on. Well, it's been going on for 11 years, but 3 years of bombs raining down around you. So to me, you're the best. And folks that haven't gone to your channel, which is Anna from Ukraine on YouTube, please go to her channel, view it, and then subscribe. She and Ukraine needs all the help you can get. Having said that and pumped you up enough, Anna, thank you and welcome back to the No Delusion Zone.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be today with you and your beautiful community. And thank you for this amazing introduction. I sometimes say that I'm just a professional Ukrainian, because I love my country, my people, and I'm very grateful that you support us and you want to know more about us.
Well, I do. And I was very sincere when I said that. I mean, some of it is tongue in cheek, as we say, but I really meant it. I've interviewed Ukrainian officials, military folks, even people from the defense industry, all of which are great. Not taking anything away from them, but because of their positions, they have to say certain things. And I understand that, but you don't have to say anything. You say what you feel and what you want to say. And to me, it's the most honest conversation that I can have with someone from Ukraine right now. And as I said, and I meant this, you have a very popular YouTube channel, and folks should go there if they want to get the sense of what's going on in Ukraine from day to day. You post just about every day, if not sometimes more than once a day. So let's get right to it. Obviously, we're in a very, how can I say, and being polite, interesting times right now, as far as the relationship between America and, well, not just Ukraine, the rest of the world. And we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff today, not just this, but could you just a little bit elaborate on what was the initial reaction for yourself and from the folks you talked to in Ukraine after well, two things. After the negotiations, the meeting that happened in Riyadh between Marco Rubio and the Kremlin, and after the 90-minute phone call between Trump and Putin.
Well, I have to be honest, of course, there were a lot of emotions because we felt that perhaps the newly elected president of the United States will push hard for really fast negotiations and some results. It is not always the best attitude, especially if we're talking about such a big war and such an aggressor as Russia, responsible for so many war crimes. And we did not like this kind of speed, because saying that it is just to stop the dying is very shallow, because by letting Russia take what it wants, we will multiply the dying, but it will simply happen behind the renewed Iron Curtain. So, of course, there were lots of emotions, especially when Putin was really quickly taken out of his isolation and brought back to the top of politics. And there were comments like Russia must return to G7, some sanctions can be lifted, and most importantly, all in the context with no promises coming from Russia, no any deal, any negotiations yet happening. So it was quite unpredictable why so many good things are happening to the bloody Russian Empire without even a reason. But Ukrainians are very resilient, and to tell you the truth, these 3 years they taught us a lot, and a lot of really bad things were happening to us. So it is just one of many. And we have developed our perhaps healing mechanisms. And there were lots of memes on social media, like first stage denial, then rage, and then what the hell? And people continue doing what they are supposed to do. I am really happy that despite some of the comments coming from the White House, specifically, I was irritated by JD Vance speaking about the invincibility of Russia and the fact that no one can defeat this army, actually knowing nothing about Russia, knowing nothing about the history of the Second World War that they keep repeating, not having a proper picture of Ukraine, Ukrainian army, Ukrainian military innovation. So this is just a repetition of the Kremlin narratives. And I was worried that this can actually demotivate some Ukrainians and kind of break the spirit, because there are a lot of already very difficult things that we are doing on the front lines, first of all, but even in our everyday life. Because talking about all of this money, you cannot imagine how much money Ukraine and Ukrainian people invested in the defeat of this quite global evil. And it's like daily challenges, starting with air raid alerts, shellings, drones flying every night to Kyiv, and so on. So the context is already bad. And here you have people coming from the White House and telling you, no matter what you try, there is no way you can defeat Russia. And I was worried that this can break the spirit. You know how important it is actually to cheer each other up. And here you get the country just like stop trying. But Ukrainians are not like that. And this actually has a country effect. Same as the criticism of Zelensky. There was one really funny joke that many people repeated on that day that, okay, we have a right to criticize our president because he's our guy, but you have no moral right to speak anything about our wartime leader. And that was a reason why his support actually grew higher. So, from one point of view, it's quite painful with the shades of betrayal when you hear things like that. But I'm once again proud of my people, how we react. We do not get like depressed or disappointed. We become more motivated, and deep down inside, you always know that you are number one to protect your interests, your borders, and your survival.
Well, you mentioned, I believe, the stages and the fact that you're kind of resilient and numb to these kinds of emotions after 3 years. Well, there are, I think, 5 stages of grief. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't gotten over the anger phase yet as far as well, I don't consider Trump to be my president. So to all you Americans that are listening that get angry at that, I don't care. He's not my president. That's an Italian gesture, by the way. I'm Italian American, and it's not polite. But I'm angry. I'm angry at a lot of things. One of them is and I did a podcast on this and wrote an article about the stab in the back for Ukraine, the stab in the back to NATO and Europe and the EU. Let me ask you this, without getting off onto that, because we could do 2 podcasts on just my anger over the current American administration. I don't want to waste time. Tell the audience this, at least my viewers that may be interested. What's it like right now, every day in Ukraine? Because and you could say this better than anyone. Putin may be lying about wanting to negotiate a peaceful resolution with Ukraine, but in fact, he's been upping his attacks. Talk about the new drone and missile and other attacks that Ukraine has been enduring since that 90-minute peaceful phone call between President Trump and President Putin.
I think one of the plans that Putin has is actually to drag America in a very bad situation when they may start any kind of cooperation, negotiations, not about Ukraine, for example, but about opening embassies in Russia and the United States again. And at that very time, Putin will continue shelling Ukrainian cities. For example, 2 days ago, in the result of a drone attack, a famous family was killed by Russians near Kiev. She was a TV presenter and he was a surgeon oncologist in Kiev. So, sure, these are not military people. And all of that is happening in the context of US Russia negotiations in Turkey and elsewhere. So, by cooperating, by talking with Putin while he continues shelling Ukraine, to some extent, Putin shows America as a collaborator. Because, come on, nothing changed. There is not even a ceasefire. They keep sending like hundreds of drones and they keep killing Ukrainian people. And we're talking about some lifted sanctions or American businesses coming to Russia and so on. So this is actually bad for America's like legacy and future generations, like when looking back at this period in history. But at the same time, we clearly see that Russia is quite exhausted. So they keep sending drones because, this war is very much a war of drones, and we destroy a lot of their strategic military and economic objects with drones. But the number of missiles they use is lower. A lot of Ukrainian military units developed some technologies that actually down Russian camps. And cab bombs were tragic for Kharkiv region. They were responsible for a lot of destructions. And we also see that the number of attacks on the front lines from the Russian side is dropping. No, it's not because of the negotiations. Actually, in country, while talking, Putin wants to continue fighting and getting more of Ukrainian territories. But this is because Russian army is exhausted. Their plan with North Korean soldiers failed. They evaporated really quickly. Now they have ordered another portion, but the result will be like the same. And I'm sure you follow the numbers, the real numbers of the Russian economy. They are devastating. And some good people even say that if Trump saves Russia, if Trump starts cooperating with Russia, this cannot change anything because some processes are already like irreversible, like a terminal stage of disease. So a lot like of Ukrainians are talking about this truly historic moment when Russia is the weakest ever in this like 21st century. And it is the best way to defeat it, to seriously demilitarize it, and then start rebuilding lasting peace. And I know that Donald Trump is very much obsessed with the idea of Nobel Prize. That would be a good reason, even if it's not like his, legacy and his work, but just let Ukraine do the job. Because to tell you the truth, at this moment, a lot of Ukrainians and also our European allies are not that much worried about the end of support coming from the USA. This is one of the things we kept in mind. Like it was an option, it's not what we want, but we understand it could happen, it may happen. But many right now are worried that the new US administration can actually prevent Ukraine from defending itself effectively. That it's not just like if you have decided to like abandon us, so do abandon, but don't interfere, don't make us I don't know, give up our territories, give up our military, or stop cooperating with European partners or something. Because logically what I cannot understand is that Donald Trump does not want to provide any security guarantees for Ukraine, and he wants the European Union to do that. Understandable. Not perfect, but let's say accepted. You have your right to isolate the United States. But then, uh, how is it possible to negotiate without Europe that is supposed to provide these guarantees? It is not just like it's first of all very disrespectful, and then it's not working if you don't have a party that is then fully responsible for the implementation of that agreement. I'm sure he knows that in business it doesn't work like that. So right now, people are very much mobilized. If you read, if you would like to know like topics, I don't know, on Facebook. Luckily, not many Ukrainians are on X, by the way. This kind of
Good.
interference in Ukrainian elections, they would be impossible because literally the majority of Ukrainians who are on X are speaking about Ukraine, just like me. It's not a popular like not many of them know English. It's not their Ukrainian language, so Musk is not does not have access to Ukrainian people.
Well, the fact that Musk now owns or has owned X, used to be Twitter, is a great reason for everyone to abandon X. I terminated my account a while back in protest of that moron, that horrible human being. You know, you just did a podcast, I think it was yesterday, or maybe even today, but about the Russian economy, about how how frail it is, how it's on life support. And you're right. Right now, the Trump administration is talking about letting Russia back into what would be the G8. It's the G7 now after Russia was kicked out, which is just unbelievable. About having full diplomatic relations reestablished, and about having at least U.S. oil companies return to Russia because there's a lot of profits to be made there. So the fact is, and to follow up on your thought, Anna, he seems to not just be abandoning support for Ukraine, which he will do. He seems to be just hell bent on propping up the Russian economy. He seems hell bent on allowing Russia to regroup, rearm, reestablish their economy, no matter how long it takes, and destroy, or at least let Russia destroy the economies of the EU, Europe, and Ukraine. Now, there was a recent article written, and I'm sure you've read it, about the retired head of the Kazakh intelligence service, who said that Trump has been a Russian asset since 1988. I'm not going to verify that. I don't know. I'm going to verify the article because that's a fact. It's been out there, but he's about the third or fourth very senior level ex-Soviet or Russian Federation intelligence official that has said the same thing at different times, living in different countries. In the intelligence world, law enforcement, or just common sense, you take various reports from different people in different areas who have different motivations and reasons, you collate them, and if they all intersect, you might have probable cause to believe that what they're saying is true. I don't have probable cause, spoken like I am a former law enforcement officer, but I have reason to believe that that may in fact be true. Why am I saying this? Because everything that Donald Trump has done since January 20th, when he was sworn in, would lead a reasonable person on a jury to conclude that he may be a Russian asset. He's not just doing things that are harmful to Ukraine and the European Union and NATO. He is actually supporting the rehabilitation of a former enemy. Your thoughts? I know I've put you in a spot here, but I'm sorry. What do you
No,
think?
thank you. I have read this article, of course. It's all over Ukrainian internet too. And we were joking about that Krasnov nickname, which is actually quite like normal choice. You know, I have a good friend who is my editor-in-chief of one of my newspapers, and her husband was the head of Ukrainian SBU once. And having read this article, I've asked her what she thinks about that. And she answered, of course, this kind of people like Trump, if they visited the USSR many times, of course, they were under attention of KGB. It's quite obvious. And taking into account his like personal interests and his hobbies, you know, like his behavior with women and so on, it's obvious that they have like cooperated with him or they have some information. And she said like she doesn't have any doubts in that there was some kind of connection, cooperation. We don't know what kind of, but it's impossible that he was just a tourist so many times in the closed Soviet Union. Like all of his women coming from this direction, which is also quite unusual. And I know there was also an FBA file or something on his first wife, who was a good Russian speaker. So too many coincidences. But here I will demonstrate you how advanced Ukrainians in their like analysis of the world. Trump is not a kind of a loyal and faithful partner. So the fact that he even worked with some Russian things does not mean he will always continue doing that. He will also, if the situation turns bad for him, he can abandon them. So literally, you cannot trust him as a Ukrainian, but you cannot trust him as a Russian too.
Well, I
And I
agree with you,
think,
Anna, and I no, and you're right, and that's the only reason I think that Putin hasn't given him his full 100% support, even though he knows that he's leading him around by the nose. Because even though I believe if he's not a Russian asset, he's behaving like one, so it really doesn't matter. But Putin knows that he's not to be trusted because he's too inconsistent. Trump doesn't know what Trump wants. You said this at the beginning of the interview.
uh,
He will change his mind in the next moment and do something different.
yeah, here in Ukraine, like we follow the headlines, and actually, I've read one article that Putin is quite jealous of that, that he's no more like top problematic person in the world.
Yes.
The attention was stolen. Even this fact can actually quarrel them in future. It's pathetic. It's
Well, there
funny,
was
but
yeah,
if they
there's
work,
there's some media reports that I saw about this, which is Putin is ordering like Channel One and the Kremlin propaganda channels to tone it down in their praise
yes.
for Trump because he's overshadowing Putin.
Yes, yes, and even this reason can be a problem for their, I don't know, future cooperation. They are quite unpredictable and very illogical. And here in Ukraine, following this, like Zelensky is a dictator. No, I didn't say that. And people here often say that we should stop reacting at all on any messages coming from the White House because there are hundreds of very emotional messages, often contradictory messages. And if we keep reacting on them, like we will die of, I don't know, blood pressure or something.
Absolutely.
So it's better to look what is happening. And nothing is happening at the moment because even these negotiations in Saudi Arabia, they didn't turn out to be like any real negotiations. Okay, one thing that Putin definitely wants is to open his embassy in the United States. Congratulations, you will have an office of FSB agents back to the United States. Some of their missions will be more successful than now. That's the only achievement, and that is exactly what he wants. He doesn't mind a US embassy opening in Moscow. Unfortunately, your special services are way too polite to interfere in the Russian life. That's a problem, I can tell you. And another thing is that this is one more proof that he's no more isolated, and some weaker countries, some countries from, let's say, South or East that still did not want to violate this general isolation now will return back to Russia's orbit because if it's okay for Trump, it's okay for them. And here I have a question to you because right now I'm reading one good book about informational wars, about tyrants in Twitter and so on. And from what I understand, the United States clearly knew about the interference of Russian but Russian like informational warfare during 2016 elections. And there were open hearings which actually proved Russia's interference, but they did not manage to prove that like Trump knew about that. like, um, well, how do you think? What's the reason that There is also proof of Russian interference in the elections in the United Kingdom, in France in 2017. Right now, I'm reading about some Chinese hackers interfering in the work of Brussels. Like, we see that. I have never read about American hackers interfering in the elections of Putin.
Look,
Why is it happening?
Russia, specifically the GRU, which you know the GRU is the Russian military intelligence, the Central Military Intelligence Agency, operating out of I think it's the second floor of this building in St. Petersburg. That's where their hackers are. We know where they are specifically. We even know a lot of their names. Yes, they hacked. They were responsible for a lot of disinformation in the 2016 elections, in the 2020 elections, in the 2024 elections. Specifically, you were mentioning 2016. The FBI investigated that thoroughly, and they concluded that Russia did interfere in a big way with the 2016 elections, not only with in the Republican Party by hacking into both the Republican and Democratic parties' emails, but I think at least as important, Anna, and this doesn't get reported enough. They do this now a lot, but back then, this was what 9 years ago. They established fake websites, fake social media
Yeah,
sites,
mirroring.
and bots.
Mhm.
That's when it
Uh-huh.
pretty much took off and it started. And they corresponded, meaning communicated with millions of Americans on social media, primarily Republicans and Trump voters, and convinced them of all of the lies and disinformation that the Republican Party wanted to put out, which were essentially Kremlin talking points. And to this day, because I've seen interviews with Republican voters who were contacted and responded to these Russian bots, and they still don't believe that they were from Russia, that they feel they really corresponded with other Americans, other MAGA people. And even when they're shown the proof, the written logs and the FBI analysis, that you know what they do? So what? They say, we don't care. We still love Trump. That's what we're dealing with here. So my answer is they don't care. Even if they believe that Russia has interfered with our elections and in fact caused Donald Trump to be elected, they don't care because right now the 50% of the American electorate who voted for Trump are more aligned with the Kremlin talking points than the traditional American Democratic talking points. That's how scary it is.
And it's dangerous even for the United States. I often get it on the channel. People leave me comments. We told you, we've told you. Like, guys, I did not have any influence on your election process. I was not the one voting. And yeah, this turbulent. What I don't like about Russian interference is that they can actually play for both. Like literally, they can now start. I don't know, supporting someone else. They want to polarize society. For example, in Europe, they support far right and far left, and they can actually back up informationally enemies because they want the society to be torn, the society to be filled with hatred.
Their goal is
And
chaos. You're right, chaos.
yes, and then you look at Russia, you look at China, authoritarian regimes, everything is well organized, no one is quarreling, and we can reach the point where, I mean, it's a fake image, but I mean, we can reach the point where people in chaotic democracies will want authoritarian rule because it's just like not that much hate, not that much polarization. And I wanted to mention one thing that, once again, with Donald Trump providing contradictory comments every day, it might be difficult for Americans to read all of that. But Ukrainian political experts, they start paying attention to what like Rubio is saying on some official things. I mean, people who are more or less in control of what they are saying. Maybe they do not express their own point of view, but I mean, they are, if they said that, they said that. They won't tell tomorrow, I didn't. So It's quite obvious that Trump tries to break the connection between China and Russia. And everyone in Europe, in Ukraine, in this like ex-Soviet countries say that this is the greatest geopolitical mistake of the 21st century because it is literally impossible. Literally impossible, just like, I don't know, make you MAGA. um, these are, and many focus on this like communist past, and Russia, by the way, is very much a communist country still. They worship all this Lenin's, Marx, and so on. But it's not about the centuries of authoritarian rule that is common for both of these countries. One reason that naive Donald Trump forgets is that most of their politics is built as anti-American. They are anti-American, and no one broke their social media. No one zombified Russians or Chinese to be fans of American lifestyle and so on. If you walk the Russian streets and you ask them how they feel about Americans, you will receive a lot of negativity, which is common for Russian people, this hate towards others. And they will outplay this weak, very inexperienced diplomatic tries to break two very authoritarian, big, very similar countries. Okay, different languages, different food, different anthropology, but Russia was a communist state and is very much is. China is a communist party. The structure of their party, their political system, their ideology, even if you look at some of their streets and buildings and monuments, and then once again, who is the main enemy of China? Russia. Who is the main America? Who is the main enemy of Russia? America. So how on earth can you imagine that Russia will be an ally with America against China? It's totally impossible, and this is a mistake that can actually cost very much to the United States when they choose to abandon the European Union. By the way, if like Trump is all about money, the GDP of the European Union is 10 times larger than the one of Russia. So if you don't want to mess with one of the parties, it's the EU. It's not Russia that you should choose. And literally, there is no way they can break the alliance. I think that China and Russia, Beijing and Moscow are like 10 steps ahead of what Trump can think and offer
I know there's
Putin.
so much to go over today that I want to try to get a lot of it in the time we have available. You're absolutely right. And the reason for the fact that Trump's probably going about this the wrong way, forgive me, I'm going to say something I said I wouldn't say. Trump's a moron. He doesn't understand China. He doesn't like them for whatever reason. I think it's a racial thing, but that's another podcast. But he doesn't understand them. And history and him don't really get along because he's functionally illiterate, so he doesn't read. I have to say this, I'm sorry. Talking about his being historically and generally illiterate, he went recently to Pearl Harbor. As you know, that was where America was attacked by Japan. It started our involvement in World War II. We have many ships that are still at the bottom of the ocean there.
Well,
And
maybe it was America who attacked Japan.
well, that's a good point. Well, let me tell you, Trump probably believes that because while he was there during a ceremony honoring the Americans who are still trapped in the ships that were sunk on December 7th, 1941, he asked somebody there, what's all of this about? Why are all these ships still sitting on the bottom? Why haven't we brought them up? He didn't know what Pearl Harbor was. He didn't know what December 7th meant to America. He didn't know that our destroyers and other warships were sitting at the bottom of the ocean with our sailors still entombed there, and that they're a national memorial and this is sacred to most Americans. He didn't even know that. I say that because not only does it piss me off, but it shows his illiteracy. He doesn't know anything about history or really much of anything else. getting back to the the point that you were making, he doesn't know Chinese history. He doesn't know Russian history. He doesn't know history. You're right. These are two, well, one was a former communist country, one still is. They both kind of still are. Ideological, they're linked. They're linked. And they're linked by also authoritarian dictators. What's scary and dangerous for the whole world is even though Trump doesn't understand that, the historical legacy and why they're connected, he's now trying to be part of that evil triumvirate. He's exactly the kind of person that Xi and Putin are. He's a dictator. He's an authoritarian. He's only interested in money and power and carving up the world to suit him personally. So yes, what he's doing is dangerous because you're right. He's not going to force the orbit, the connection between China and Russia apart. It's stupid and dangerous. But I want to get to a point again before it gets too late in the podcast. You mentioned at the outset, well, before we went on air, actually, that many people, especially in this administration and of Donald Trump, believe that Russia is winning the war in Ukraine, that Ukraine is desperately losing, that you're on your last legs, and that Ukraine needs to grovel and just ask for any kind of peace that they can get, when in fact, that's utter bullshit. Russia is losing in every way possible, militarily, strategically, tactically, and economically. They are begging North Korea, for God's sake, for troops and artillery shells. They're borrowing and stealing drones from Iran. They're taking people from the poorest sections of Russia and conscripting them into the military, because they're giving them so much money, and still they are losing. After 11 years of war, they still have no more than 20% of Ukrainian territory, and that hasn't budged at all in at least 3 years. If Ukraine had the ammunition and the weapons that they needed, that you need, they would have won the war. We wouldn't be having this conversation. I think that's critically important for the American people and, to a lesser degree, the European population to know. If Trump or anybody in this administration where I live got a brain and supplied you, meaning the Ukrainian military, with what they need, what they're begging for, Russia would be militarily defeated. Period. That's my rant.
Well, you've practically said it all. But yeah, it's really bad when people who have no knowledge, okay, let alone history, but the situation in Ukraine, like Trump did not see Ukraine, JD Vance did not see Ukraine, and they keep repeating about the destroyed cities and so on. Unfortunately, there are some settlements and cities destroyed on the front line. But despite all the efforts, Russia did not manage to grasp even one new regional center since the beginning of 2014. The Blitzkrieg failed. They soon will lose 1 million people. And we have developed successful strategies. And by the way, these strategies are fully dependent only on the Ukrainian armed forces, which is good, like targeting the oil refineries and paralyzing up to 40% of their industry.
And I want to interrupt you because you just did a couple of really good podcasts. Talk about the Ukrainian drone strikes on the Russian infrastructure, specifically their oil refineries and other energy sites. Please, that's very important, I think.
Yeah, well, Russia is a totally dependent on its raw resources country, and oil and gas are the only products it can offer. It's not competitive in innovation or services. And Ukrainian drones now travel really deep inside the Russian RIA. We have destroyed up to 46% of their oil refineries, which are not on the Far East, paralyzing the export and, most importantly, the military machine that needs various kinds of oil products and petrol for that. And inside Russia, they are very dissatisfied with that. And there are already people asking Russian propagandists what is wrong with Russian air defense? Who are the people responsible for downing these drones? And they actually raise the question to launch these private armies that can protect oil refineries, because the regular Russian army failed, and they openly speak about that. And I remember the times when Ukrainians were also forbidden or not advised to target these oil refineries, again from the US administration, even from the previous one. So it's not the first time when we feel kind of in awe, like there's so many advice of political experts. Don't speak about Budapest memorandum, that irritates our people. Don't target oil refineries. So sometimes it's feel like stop defending yourself. But if we will stop defending ourselves, you won't like it, because what they do on occupied territory is they mobilize people. And it's not because people switch the sides, but it's because people are afraid, for example, that children will be taken away, as tens of thousands of Ukrainian children now with stolen identities in Russia, which is a true cultural genocide, and tortured and so on. And in such conditions, people join that army. And that's what they did with people in Donetsk and Luhansk who were forcibly mobilized and joined these meat grinders. So if they take Ukraine, if they are not forbidden to continue, why wouldn't they expand? And I'm not sure that Trump would protect the Baltics of Poland,
No,
because
go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, so we have a lot of successful Ukrainian military developments. We have missiles that I'm sure soon will be sent with messages to Russia. We have drones, and this war is very much a drone war. Despite all the difficulties, mobilization and conscription continues. Mistakes were changed, and now the conscription process is more like choice friendly, your expertise friendly, and more people actually sign contracts. That's a better way to do it. So the country is very, very, very resilient. And Russia is just a big, as my beautiful viewers say, paper tiger. And someone added a toilet paper tiger. And you know what, I'm worried. I'm worried that those people who pretend that Russia is so strong and so big actually know this really bad situation inside the Russian economy, inside the Russian, like, different spheres of their life, and are actually saving Russia because they are afraid of the collapse of the federation, of the unpredictability that may come. But trust me, the predictability that comes with Putin appeased, forgiven, and actually praised is way worse than unpredictability. I like it how Jake Bro says that, like a very strong voice for Ukraine, a super great YouTuber, and he says that okay, personally he was also concerned about the collapse of the Russian Federation or the potential nuclear war, but we are not to blame for that. The process started by Putin, and actually we should stop saving Russia, because they will keep destroying the world and this way also destroying themselves.
Absolutely. It's ridiculous to think that anyone in the West needs to prop up or save Russia for fear that a destabilized Russia is going to be worse for the West. It can't get any worse. I mean, yes, of course, nuclear missiles can start raining down, but that may happen anyway, especially if there's a Russian a victory or a ceasefire with absolutely no security guarantees for Ukraine. Let me say this, Anna, and let me get your thoughts. I believe that, first of all, you mentioned Article 5. I'm sorry, Trump's not going to honor Article 5. He's just not. I don't think if Russian tanks started rolling into downtown Warsaw at this point, or Prague, that he would honor Article 5, much less into the city of Narva, which is on the border with Estonia and Russia. He's just not going to do it. He's a man of money, and not money for America, money for himself. He's just not going to do it. So let me say this. This is my thought and my question. I believe that Europe, NATO specifically, and the EU are finally, very slowly, and it angers me, but finally getting the memo, getting the message that they're, I will say blanked. I would say another word, but I won't, that they're blanked now because America is abandoning their defense. And they're starting to get afraid, and they're scrambling into emergency sessions to rebuild their militaries, to rebuild their defense industries, to rebuild their entire thought process and defense against Russia. So I believe that if not when America finally admits officially they are not going to support Ukraine with any security guarantees, I believe that if NATO and the EU get its act together in a reasonable time frame, regardless of what kind of peace negotiations or agreement is signed between the United States and Russia and even Ukraine, I believe that that Europe alone, within the next couple of years, can successfully defend Ukraine against another Russian invasion. What are your thoughts?
First, I am not sure that any agreement will be signed at all. Because right now we have only Donald Trump saying everything moves really greatly. And we have Lavrov constantly saying we want more Ukrainian territories, we will not allow any European troops, and so on. We clearly see no like softening of the Russian position, and just Donald Trump saying everything goes according to the plan. Second, I would not underestimate the role of EU support because actually the sums of money that they gave to Ukraine to defend is higher than that of the US. And we are grateful to every country. And I honestly do not feel comfortable talking about all this money and comparing who gave us more because it's wrong. Some countries are smaller, but they have given a lot compared to their GDP. Others are big and also, the United States have a very tricky system of counting the things that were given to Ukraine because the price of new weapons that you buy for yourself is included in the sums of money that are considered as given to Ukraine. So literally, you are giving us an old tank and you also buy yourself a new tank and we receive like two tanks. Well, the sum
Called
counts.
creative accounting.
Yeah, in Europe they count it in a different way. So for example, if they gave us F-16, so this is the sum of F-16, not the sum of F-35 bought for Denmark after that is not taken into account, and the United States it is. But once again, I'm looking forward for the moment when Donald Trump will ask Russia for some return of money from the Second World War, because Soviet Union won only because of the American support. So time to ask for that too. And another thing is that a lot of European productions previously were slowed down, but by the United States, who wanted to be like a central military producer and who was interested that European countries, way smaller, would buy the things from the United States. And this actually created a very negative precedent when, for example, one country in Europe is prepared to give its military equipment to Ukraine and is ready to, I don't know, transport it to the front lines, but it needs the permission of the United States because the weapons were produced in the United States. All these systems, perhaps they were invented after the Second World War and they don't take into account the context and dynamics of war. So there were a lot of unnecessary obstacles, and taking them into account, actually, Ukraine is doing really, really well. So I hope. I personally believe that, yes, sure, Europe is awakening, but not only because like it was quite logical, and maybe we will return to that there is this a transatlantic alliance that the United States, Canada stand together with Europe, as one of my beautiful viewers said, because Europe is the mother. We cannot abandon the mother just because like the US is a child sick with Trump. We cannot abandon our wise mother. And once again, it's so wrong to squirrel with long-time allies and to look for support with countries that deep inside openly hate you. Maybe that will change once again, not because of Trump's wisdom, but because of the American people influencing. Because whenever I say something disappointing about the decisions, I want to stress that it's not about the people. It's about this 180 degrees turn in the White House, which is once again a proof it's not natural because a foreign policy of the country can change, but it changes slowly and not just like 180 degrees. And I think that contrary to Russia, contrary to China, in the United States, people can change and can do a lot by demonstrating their support to Ukraine. But I don't know, even like when Trump's favorite newspaper went out with, no, this is not a dictator and Putin's portrait, it can work. And it seems to me that the only thing that Trump cares right now is this like numbers, polling numbers and reactions. And maybe that's something that can influence.
Let me say this, and we'll have to close it out on this. I'll get your final thoughts in just a moment. I'll say this, Anna. I actually have some very optimistic feelings right now that I haven't had since January 20th. And the reason for that is that a large percentage of the almost 50% of the American electorate who did not vote for Donald Trump are pretty angry right now. And they are starting to voice their anger in a very vocal way. They're starting to take to the streets. I don't mean in a violent way, just in a peaceful way, but in larger and larger numbers. Protests, by the way, Anna, that do not make it into the mainstream American media. Why? Because it's now controlled by MAGA, by Donald Trump. They don't want to put stories about protests against the Trump administration into the mainstream media. Let me tell you something. They're happening. I know because I am one of the voices of the opposition here in America. I'm not happy to say that. It's just what I've been forced into. And the groundswell of anger against what Elon Musk, the unelected, unvetted person, is doing to the American government vis-a-vis the gutting of the government, which is a danger to Ukraine and Europe as well, has just about reached its peak of tolerance, meaning we're not taking it anymore. Like I said, about half the country, the half that didn't vote for Trump, are starting to rise up. I think you're going to see that more and more. And if it gets to the point where I think it's going to get, where the party of Donald Trump, MAGA, the Republicans, or as I say, the fascist party of America, realizes that half the country or even a third of the country hates them and are very angry, you're going to see a change in that 180 degrees go back to where it used to be. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's going to be a lot sooner than I thought it would be. And for me, that's about as optimistic a view as I've had in a long, long time. I'll leave you with the final words.
Thank you so much for this optimism. And I personally believe that you have a very beautiful country. And, some people say that Ukrainians are actually Americans of Europe because we are brave, we stand firm, we know what we want to protect, we are quite independent. It's just the circumstances. I mean, like fighting against China, Russia, and North Korea and Iran demand some support from our allies, but in general, we are a very brave and strong country. And the United States have always been an example for us what you can do with your freedom, how you can build your system. And I personally believe that the system of checks and balances was perhaps the greatest creation of the American people, way better than Apple or anything else. Please protect that because Elon Musk is not a good person, and that's quite obvious, not starting from the way he speaks with the military, with famous researchers, with teachers, this kind of bullying and humiliation that is his new normal, and taking into account what kind of power he received in the United States, not being elected. And there are openly wrong messages that he shares and wrong gestures that he demonstrates. So I hope that this can stop before it starts shaking the system too seriously, because you definitely have what to protect, what to love, and what to be proud of.
Thank you, Anna. I love my country. I agree with you. America's a great country, and I think that's an actual great analogy that Ukraine is the America of Europe right now. And you are, in my opinion, the bravest people on earth right now, and you have been for some time. So you stay doing what you do, and I'll stay doing what I do. You're the voice of Ukraine, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm the voice of or one of the voices of the American opposition. Between the two of us, hopefully we can make some changes for the better. Anna of from Ukraine, please, folks, if you haven't seen her channel on YouTube, Anna from Ukraine, go there. Like I said, she's the best podcast, the best information source you'll get about what's going on right now in Ukraine. Anna, thank you so much. You take care, stay safe, and stay sane.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your support, and we remain united.